Hello and welcome to the quick start guide for making your first character in D&D. I don't think we need an intro, so let's go ahead and jump right on into it. First things first, you gotta decide what class you want to play. A raging barbarian, a cunning rogue, or maybe a fighter named Bob. Choice is up to you. Whichever you choose here is going to affect your choices later on, so just make sure you know what you want to play. After you choose your class, you need to choose some skills that you're proficient in. Each class essentially has a list of skills that they are proficient in, and you can choose from those depending upon what's listed in the class features under your class in the player's handbook. Some classes have 2, some classes have 3, some classes have, I don't know off the top of my head. Just make sure you pick those and check the little box next to the skill on your character sheet and you're good to go. We'll touch upon that later. With those little boxes checked, you're all set and good to go. Pick out a race now. Now, depending upon the race you choose, your character will get different racial traits. These traits can be something as simple as bonuses to stats, or even something as powerful as the ability to reroll ones. It's totally up to the race you choose. With those features in mind, your race also determines your speed, so let's quickly note that down now while we're here. The speed can be found under the trait section of whatever race you choose. It is worth noting that yes, there are ideal combinations for each class, but remember, D&D is a game that is played for fun. It is a game. Don't feel restricted to choose races that traditionally fit your class. No matter what anyone says, a gnome barbarian is not only funny, but also can be just as effective as any other barbarian. Also, if someone's telling you not to play a gnome barbarian named Bob, they don't want you to have fun, so you probably don't want to play with them anyways. I'm not going to go over every racial feature in this video, but if you're curious on a quick guide on how to build the best traditional class, I have posted links to the quick build videos that I'm making in the description box below for you to check out. But now that your race and class have been decided, it's time I introduce you to the class tables. Each class has a table of all things the classes get as they level up from 1 all the way to level 20. All you have to do is find that table for your class, find the first level on that table, and see what you get from it. Then you can refer to the information in the handbook or on D&D Beyond. For example, if we take a look at the Ranger table here, we can see at level 1 it gets both a Favored Enemy and Natural Explorer. For more information about what those both do, all you have to do is find the Ranger in the class section of the player's handbook and scroll on down until you find it. Then, note those down in the feature and trait section of your character sheet and you're good to go. Now, even if you're creating a brand new, fresh level 1 character, it is important to look at everything your character gets up until level 3, as all classes by then get something called a subclass. In the tables, they aren't necessarily even called subclasses per se, they have flavored names like Ranger Archetype or Sorceress Origin. This is important to know because sometimes, depending upon the subclass you choose, it can change the priority of what stats you need to be effective as that subclass, and it can really change how your character is played. Sticking with the Ranger example, you could be a Hunter, a Beastmaster, or a Drake Warden. Each of these are Rangers, however, each of them gain different features and play incredibly different from one another. And this decision right here is where most of your time should be spent figuring it out, as it arguably has the largest effect on how your character plays in the game. But once you've decided on your subclass and those abilities according to your table, you're ready to move on to the fun stuff, like the click-clack math rocks. And yes, I mean rolling for stats. Rolling for stats is iconic for Dungeons & Dragons, and every DM has a preferred method of doing so. Some DMs prefer it to be in person while you roll, and others just do standard array. Make sure you check with your DM before you roll for your stats. However, the only proper way to roll for stats, as the gentleman or gentlelady you are, is the 4d6 method. For each stat, you simply roll 4d6s and drop the lowest roll. For example, you might roll a 6, a 4, a 3, and a 1. With this method, you would drop the 1 and add together the rest, creating 13. You do this 6 more times, at which point in time you drop the lowest option out of the 7 total you have, and you can then allocate those stats to whatever stats you prefer. And just as a point of reference, a 10 is completely average, giving no bonus. Every 2 stat points in a stat increase or decrease the modifier by 1, meaning a stat of a 16 or 17 will grant a +3 bonus, while a stat of an 8 or a 9 grants a -1. These plus or minuses are known as modifiers, and they affect everything you do in D&D. Before you allocate your stats, make sure you double check your subclass to decide what stats are most important for your character. Once you've allocated your stats, we can go ahead and quickly determine your initiative bonus. By default, initiative is simply a dex check, so without any other feats or bonuses, it's simply your dex modifier. Let's assume in the example for the Ranger that we're creating on the page has a 12 in every stat. That would mean that it has a dex bonus or a dex modifier of a +1, so we'll mark that down under initiative. Now that we have all of the stats, we get to do some fun math. I know, okay, fine, math's not fun, I get it, but hey, at least your grade school teacher wasn't lying when he said you would need these math skills later on. I mean, hopefully you play D&D enough to actually use the math skills. If not, he probably was lying. All the following numbers we're going to be talking about now are affected by something called a proficiency bonus, and if you go back to your class table, it will show you what your bonus is. Generally, at level 1, your proficiency bonus is a +2, but it might change. So with that, let's talk about health, saving throws, and skills. All of these can be found under the class features section of your player's handbook for your specific class. In there, you will see hit points, proficiencies, and equipment. Under hit points, it essentially walks you through getting your max HP. Each class has something called a hit die, and this determines your health as you level by rolling and adding it to your max health. Starting at level 1, you get a max roll, meaning if your hit die is a D8, you have an 8 plus your constitution modifier to max HP. Meaning if you have a +3 to constitution, you would have 11 max health at level 1. However, unfortunately for my ranger, they only have a +1, meaning that they only have 9 health at level 1. Alongside this, each class also has a set of saving throws they're proficient in. Sticking with the ranger, they're proficient in both strength and dexterity saving throws. So just like we did before, we're going to go ahead and check those boxes next to the saving throws on our character sheet. For each check on the character sheet under skills and saving throws, that essentially means that you are proficient in that skill or saving throw, and that simply means you add your proficiency bonus and your modifier to those kinds of rolls. So for our level 1 ranger we're making with a 12 in every stat, the saving throws would be +3 strength, +3 dex, +1 constitution, +1 intelligence, +1 wisdom, and +1 charisma. Now this same logic applies to skills. We checked these off at the beginning of the video, so now all we need to do is go back and add our modifiers, and if they're checked with proficiency, then add a proficiency bonus to that. Each skill has a stat associated with it that indicates the modifier that's used when rolling those skill checks. So our ranger with 12 in every stat would look something like this. Our athletics is a +3 because of our +1 modifier and our +2 proficiency bonus. However, we only have a +1 to our insight, which is a wisdom roll, because we only have the modifier to use for those rolls. And now with our stats all out of the way, our skills set in stone, it's time to go back and add some customization to our characters with backgrounds and equipment. Each character has a background that also provides some unique bonuses to each character. Some characters might have a background of a folk hero, while others might have been a sailor. Each of these backgrounds provides a different bonus. Some of them have things like skills or tool proficiencies that you can mark directly under the skills tree or in the proficiency and languages section. And once we finish off our background on the skills it provides us, we can then talk about and deal with our equipment. Now some DMs change up how they like to do equipment when you're creating a new character, but as is, depending on your class and background, you gain different starting equipment. You can check your class equipment right under the class features of that section. For Ranger, you get a couple of things. Either a scale mail or a leather armor, either 2 short swords or 2 simple melee weapons, a dungeoneer's pack or an explorer pack, and a longbow and a quiver with 20 arrows. For the armor and weapons, you can refer to the corresponding weapon or armor table in the player's handbook. But once we decide which ones we're taking, we can then go ahead and math out our armor class and our attacks. Armor class is used to determine if you're hit by an attack or not, and it's calculated by 10 plus your dex modifier base. Now that 10 can change based upon the armor that you choose. So, for example, if we chose leather armor for our ranger, on the table it states that that calculation is now 11 plus the dex modifier, making our total AC 13. Where if we had the option to take studded leather, we would have a base of 12 plus our dex modifier, making 14. Once you figure out your armor class, it's time to put some actions under the attack and spell casting for quick access during combat. Depending upon the weapons you choose, you can refer to the weapons table in the player's handbook to see how your damage calculates. Looking at the ranger we are creating, I have a longbow and a short sword that I can use to attack with. So we'll refer to the table and see that a short sword is a finesse weapon that deals a d6 piercing damage, while the longbow is a two-handed weapon that deals a d8 piercing damage. You can see that each weapon has different properties, but for now we'll stick with the base that we have here. Now, basic rule when attacking is generally melee attacks use strength for bonuses and ranged attacks use dexterity for bonuses. So when attacking with our longbow, we utilize our dexterity for our bonus. So it would look something like this. Our base attack would be a +3 since we have a +1 in dex and we are proficient with the longbow, adding our proficiency bonus of +2. And the damage would be a d8 +1. We add our modifier to the damage rolls, however proficiency only applies when rolling to hit and does not apply to damage. Adding our short sword into the mix here, it would look similar. an attack bonus of +3, and a damage of a d6 +1. Whenever you're trying to hit with a weapon that you're proficient with, you always add your proficiency bonus and your modifier to the attack to hit roll. And once you understand that, you're pretty much done, assuming you don't have any spell casting you want to do. If you do have spells, then lucky you, we get to move on to the final section of this video, being spells. Now at this point, we need to refer back to the handy dandy class table. Each spellcasting class has cantrips known, spells known, and spell slots. Cantrips are essentially spells that you can cast an unlimited amount of times per day, and most classes get a certain amount of them they can learn. As they level up, they have the ability to learn more cantrips, similar to spells known, which you may have already guessed is simply the amount of spells that you can actually know, not including your cantrips. And finally, we have spell slots per level. This simply means how many times you can cast a spell of that level per day. Now that we know all of that base information, you can go ahead and find spells that you're interested in under your class spell list. Yes, each class has their own unique list of spells that they can learn and they are limited to. You can find the list of spells in the basic rules, and all you have to do is simply navigate to the back of the book where your classes list, and you can choose the number of spells that you know from that list. And finally, once you have all of your spells set and chosen, we need to do one final thing. Calculate our spell save DC and attack modifier. The calculation for both of these can be found under your class's spells casting section of the handbook. Your spell save DC is an 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your class modifier stat, and your spell attack bonus is your proficiency bonus plus your class modifier stat. Now your class modifier stat changes obviously depending upon your class. Who would have guessed? A wizard uses intelligence, a sorcerer uses charisma. Just look it up in the book, it'll be right there under your class. Spells clarify which one of these stats they'll use, but if you have one that has a spell attack modifier, we can go ahead and add that in the attack section on our sheet if we want it for quick access. Similar to the setup for the equipment, we'll take the damage for the spell, we'll go ahead and put the spell attack modifier on there, and we're good to go. And with that, we are finally done. Whew. Man, that took a lot longer than I was hoping for. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope I was able to help you make your first character. I know it's a lot, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments. I will be happy to help. Also, if you want a quick build for any of these classes, I will be making a video for each of them that you can check in the description box below. But anyways, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you all on Friday.